Make games. Drink coffee.
Hey, good morning. I'm Aaron Nemoitin, and this is Make Games, Drink Coffee, a podcast featuring conversations with game developers about their jobs, their hobbies, and whatever they're passionate about. Today, I'm talking to Don Bellenger, founder of indie studio The Beauty Cult. Don is a programmer, game designer, artist, musician, and amateur baker who's been through the startup meat grinder and came out the other end determined to forge his own path. Full disclosure, Don and I have been friends since 2018, so this is a looser conversation than usual. I hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoyed recording it. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to the interview.
Hi, my name is Don Bellenger. I am a game developer from Oakland, California. I've worked on indie games for something like 10-ish years now, to great and small acclaim. So before that, I worked as an engineer in a studio, kind of burnt out real good doing that. And kind of in between all that, I've tried to go find a career in tech and mostly hated it and tried to find my people in various things. And it's like, mixed results.
You're an Oakland person in a San Francisco world, so to speak.
That's incredibly true. Yeah, that's I know exactly what you mean. I'm 100% agreed. Yes.
So since this podcast is called Make Games Drink Coffee, I have to ask what you're drinking because you just took a swig.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I'm drinking water. It's pretty cool. I actually gave up caffeine entirely last year, and that's been awesome.
Drinking water out of a mug, that's subversive.
Yeah, I'm subverting really hard. It's so good. Yeah, I used to drink a tremendous amount of coffee, like 4 cups a day, and it was not so good for me. Now I in the morning I'll just drink really hot water. Throughout the day I'll just drink really hot water. It saves a lot on heating bills, especially when you're like an indie game developer and you don't want to like heat a whole house when you're ultimately just trying to heat yourself. So I tend to just drink really warm fluids all day to stay warm. It's great. It's a clever budgeting hack, is to just insert the thermal units directly into your body instead of trying to absorb them through your skin like some kind of billionaire.
So I have a list of questions. They're very interviewee, podcasty, fresh airy even.
Yes. Yeah. We're going. We're doing it.
So here's my first very podcasty question. Aesthetically, your indie games are very bright and shiny. They've got that sort of future neon look to them. But I think in terms of attitude, you are the most punk game developer that I know.
Oh, that's really nice of you.
So your company is called The Beauty Cult, and there's a manifesto on the website that mentions games as subversive art.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how does your game in progress, which is called Nectarmancer, sort of fit into your view of games as subversive art?
Yeah. So first, it's I think gameplay wise, it's really weird. It does a lot of things that I think you could only do if you just worked on your game forever, like Silksong. So it has the benefit of I think interesting mechanics that are just there to kind of needle the market in some way. I think also the story and the job you do as the player character is very subversive. You're tasked with basically being a tax collector for this evil government, and this happens to basically be a death sentence. And you're like, all right, well, let's do that. But instead of letting this job kill me, let me like hack around it. Let me like find a way to kind of cheat at my job and actually survive it and not have it kill me, which is a very thin metaphor for the world. So what is the least I can give of myself to this job, which kind of demands more and more of it every day. And that to me, I think exemplifies or like kind of sums up how I feel about working in games and how I kind of allocate my labor across multiple projects. I'm only really here because I think working in tech or wherever it was, I just got like kind of disgusted with like, oh, I'm going to spend 8 hours a day working for some guy or like some VC who like already has 2 Teslas. Like, I don't need to do that. That like no one needs me to do that either. And there's so many market forces that unfortunately push us in that direction and put us in that situation. So I think Nectarmancer is very much related to that. It's, how little could I actually give to this job that pays me, and how much could I actually indulge like a passion of mine, which is, in the game, it's staying alive.
That is very cool. You mentioned market forces, and obviously that plays a role in determining what you're going to build, even as an indie developer, right? Nectarmancer is a Metroidvania, and that is something that the market wants. And I'm curious, if time and money were no issue, are there any subversive game ideas that you have sort of stuck in your head that you really, really wish could exist?
I think making people more self-sufficient is, in fact, a subversive idea. I would really like, I also bake as like a thing to save money and to pretend I provide for my family. But in this case, I think, how baking works and how people approach baking from the outside of it, they're kind of missing it for so long. They follow recipes, and they think baking is this really exact science, and it's not. Baking is like all jazz to me, and I think I would like to make a really, really bonkers baking simulation, kind of like the RimWorld or Dwarf Fortress of baking. That I've seen other games do it, and they don't go nearly as far. They don't model ambient temperature. They don't model the culture in your sourdough. They just don't go far enough. And baking is like the easiest thing. It's basically the first food we figured out, besides like water and alcohol. So, yeah, it's really primitive. I think if people had that skill, they would feel a lot less. They would have several degrees of freedom that they may not currently have. And that, to me, would be pretty cool.
It's awesome. Speaking of subversive, you are into horror films, which are traditionally a vehicle for subversive ideas. Is there anything in that area that has excited you recently?
Man, I think I've seen stuff that is genuinely really scary to me. And I haven't seen horror films, any new ones in a while, but I did see Barbarian, which came out a few years ago, and I saw Nosferatu, which I thought was kind of a snoozer. I don't really like it, to be honest.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's got a vibe. It's got production, but it didn't talk to me. It didn't really scare me. It didn't freak me out. But I loved The Substance. That was a messed up movie.
Yeah, that's so fun.
That was incredible. It turned into basically like an early Peter Jackson film at the end with like just all the blood and guts, and turned into like Dead Alive. And like, okay, this is cool. It was maybe the only way to just like resolve this crazy story, and like that's fine. I had a good time. I liked Infinity Pool. That's kind of a weird one. But I thought Barbarian was really scary. That just how the stakes kept increasing, and I thought that was just a dreadful movie to watch. I really, really liked it. It was just terrible. It was so scary, Aaron. It was so scary.
I don't experience movies like that. I enjoy the experience, and like, I loved Nosferatu because it was just an awesome experience.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm scared or not, but what's weird, what surprised me is I felt the emotional stakes of Nosferatu. And by the end of it, like, I really cared about, without spoiling it, I really cared about the sacrifice that was made. And I was surprised about that because I felt like, the director's previous movies felt a little bit more emotionally disconnected. But Barbarian, I thought, was an awesome ride. And I don't know that I felt like it was scary, but I was just like, oh, this is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe I do like the indie game developer thing where I approach a medium with way too much like specific thing I need out of it, where like, this movie isn't scary. I don't know what it's for.
So I'm gonna bring back the past here, and I know that this is not necessarily something that you enjoyed doing, but we both have background in so-called mid-core games.
Yeah.
You were at Kixeye working on Facebook games, And I was at first a Facebook startup called ClickNation, and then we got bought by EA, and then I was on mobile games. But I forgot what my question was.
How fun was it? How awesome was it? Did you have a great time, Donald? Yeah, I did. It was pretty great.
Hold on. Is there anything you can bring from that experience into the games that you've made, or is that something where there's sort of a wall and you're like, this is one thing and this is another thing, and there's not really anything can translate between this sort of free to play model that's meant for constant engagement, attention, monetization versus, making an indie game about trying to survive your job?
Yeah, no, I think actually, I think back to that time a lot, and I think it's very relevant. I think it's still kind of a teachable experience. There's things that are still with me from that. Just, I think that's really where I turn into, like, where I went from like a junior software engineer to like a senior engineer, and just like the things I picked up during that time doing that work. It doesn't really matter what the project or product was. Doesn't really matter. That's all, that some of that stuff is like still in kind of the work I do. There's systems now that have followed me from project to project to project, and they started all the way back there. And I think also just seeing how that company ran and how kind of the culture of the place and kind of how teams functioned is also kind of its own informative experience. Luckily, that's a time that is never coming back. Like, nobody, you can't run a team or a studio that way unless you're writing some like VC trend. Like, I don't know, like I imagine a Web3 company like 3 years ago was kind of like that. Like, they're just, they're going to strip clubs. They're just blowing money on stupid stuff. They're just like this toxic workplace because, we're king of the world, that I'm so glad that is not coming back, at least not in my life or anything I'm going into. But yeah, it's just a crazy time to be there. That company made every dumb choice, talking about like, making dumb choices in a film. This company I was at, Kixeye, they missed mobile. They saw mobile coming and happening, and they even had a port of one of their games running on a device, and they're like, "Nah, we don't think so. We're gonna sit this one out. We think this isn't it." And just to see like a whole lot of people getting paid a whole lot of money be so wrong about something, it was like, oh man, it kind of, I think, helped me have a lot less respect for people who just happen to be in positions of authority and power. Like, nobody at Kixeye knew anything. They were babies. They didn't know anything. They made terrible choices. It was great. I think about it a lot, actually.
I think for context, anyone listening who isn't familiar with this, I'll just say that if you're familiar with Clash of Clans by Supercell, which is one of the most successful mobile games of all time, it's made billions of dollars at this point. Kixeye invented that kind of game back on Facebook with a game called Backyard Monsters. And the way that Kixeye originally raised money is because they made a hit Flash game on Congregate called Desktop Tower Defense. And they basically built something like that into Backyard Monsters, which is a sort of free-to-play, highly monetized version of Tower Defense. And they could have brought that genre to mobile and done really well, but they didn't. And then Supercell came along, built Clash of Clans, and ate their lunch, so to speak.
Ate their lunch. People were using that phrase a lot at the time. Ate our lunch. It's extremely appropriate.
Make Games, Drink Coffee is brought to you by me. Yeah, Aaron here. There's no sponsor. I'm just doing this myself. Enjoy the music. I made it to be talked over, just like this. Anyway, I did recently re-upload my political satire idle game Troll Farm to the mobile stores, and I would love for you to play it. It's free, so I won't make any money, but I'm just really proud of it, and I feel like it's extremely relevant now for reasons that will become obvious as soon as you start playing it. Yeah, Troll Farm. Download it. Okay, that's it. Maybe someday there will be a real ad here so I can pay myself for doing this podcast. But that's not the case now. Anyway, back to the interview. Okay, shifting gears quite a bit. You've been with this nonprofit called Gameheads for almost a decade now, and you've mentioned this to me a bunch of times, but you said this means a lot to you. So can you talk about this a bit?
Yeah. So I mean, where was I? I burned out at Kixeye, and I was kind of messing around, like just trying to like be a software engineer at some like SaaS companies. Like, this sucks. And I saw that, my old Kixeye coworker, Marcus Montgomery, he was starting this thing called Gameheads. I'm like, oh, whoa, this is cool. Because I had just like personally been like sick of like making evil games, like games that preyed on whales to like survive. Like, it just felt really gross to me. And I saw this Gameheads thing. I'm like, oh, this is actually really cool. And the phrase that I kept kind of coming back to is like, I'll get to use my powers for good. And it started, I was at some other job, and I had a call with the program director, Damon Packwood, and just to be a volunteer mentor. So I did that, and he assessed that I was not like a total psycho, and he's like, okay, you get to be around kids. So I did that for one summer, and they basically pair you with another like a young person who at the time, and still it's always disadvantaged Black and brown youth in Oakland, California, and who are basically being mentored into a career in video games. These students get put into groups, and they're part of the summer accelerator program. They get paired with a mentor. That was me. And I would kind of just give them advice and mostly just kind of be there for them. We meet every now and then. And at the end of the summer, they have a big showcase. Basically, all the student projects are there. So I did that for a couple years. And then I was invited to join the board for this new thing called Gameheads Studios, where they're going to take money from Humble Bundle, which still existed, and like 2K, which had money, and like Hangar 13, which had money at the time. And they're basically gonna like, just give money to some of these student projects and basically try to turn them into commercial releases. So, a lot of the student projects, they're high on ambition and low on just kind of best practices. But it's very scrappy. They get the job done. And the Game at Studios projects, it's like, all right, well, how do we kind of turn these into something closer to a like commercial project? So I've been doing that for, I don't know, like 8+ years. And we've had a lot of games come through. Some of them have done really cool things. One game, Pacapomo, it showed at Games for Change. And all these projects are kind of crazy. They do really ambitious things. And yeah, it's really cool. They had a showcase. The showcase keeps getting better. And it's always at like, last few years it's been at Mills College, and they have an expo, and they do an award ceremony, and it's just like an amazing environment. It's really, really positive. It actually makes a difference in these people's lives, and I've seen kind of these young people start in the program. And now this one student, she works at Double Fine. She went cool. From there to there. And this other guy, this kid Duran, where did he wind up at like Sledgehammer? Yeah, it's nice. Like it actually works. It doesn't work for everybody. It's a lot of kids going in. Not everybody finishes it. But it's, for a few kids, it's just right. And it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Quick aside, Damon Packwood is, I think, he's a program director for Gameheads. He is, I think, my business icon. Like, this guy has got hustle like no one's ever seen. There's a Gameheads HQ in Oakland. They actually have a building for this like nonprofit, and they've kind of like gone through a few locations, like these really scrappy like community hubs that have, like mold problems. But now they have like this like 2-story building, like this industrial-ish building in like Jack London Square area, and and they have a whole mocap studio in there that's all just like hand-me-downs from 2K. They have green screen. They have like they have just like a ton of VR equipment. Just and when you talk to Damon about, like, Damon, how'd you do this? Like, how'd you turn a nonprofit into a thing that has this? And it's just like the most amazing stories every time. And that guy, I think, has kind of shown me like actually what is possible if you're willing to kind of forge your own path.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredible. He's really hard to get a hold of. He's really busy. Not the most organized person, but oh my God, this guy is just amazing. It's really cool to see him work.
So since you've had so much experience giving advice to young game developers, I'm curious, is there a piece of advice that you have discovered works exceptionally well and is useful? And is there a piece of advice that you have given that you've discovered is actually not helpful?
Man, I don't know. There's so much advice out there, and I feel like it all makes sense for some people and not for others. It's very contextual. For so many people, especially like young people or people like they're just trying to get in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That seems to far and away, that's like the biggest thing I hear is like, I'm just looking for my first job in games or just like my next job in games. And even, when I'm like between things and I'm looking for a job, it's like, it's terrible out there. It's so bad.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any amount of advice that could like solve that problem for anybody. It really is, I think, always kind of who you know. And
sadly,
that when I look back to everything that I've had, it really is down to like, okay, here's a personal connection. We work together. And I think just being really social is kind of the answer. I think that's or not the answer, but the best advice I could give is to like go be social and like go be a human and don't be all weird about it. Just like be yourself. I don't know. There's so much advice out there. None of it seems to work as far as I can tell. So people say like, oh, just make a bunch of small games. Like, I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's like, get good at your craft, do that any way you can. I don't know if a bunch of small games that no one's going to care about is better than, one medium-sized game that also no one's going to care about. Like, so I don't know. There are, I think if you're really early in your career, there are a lot of moments where like, oh no, I gotta just junk this whole thing. I gotta go to something new. I think that is totally fair. I think that's real. I would do that. I don't know, just knowing yourself, I think, and knowing the quality of what you're doing is very important. I don't know, Aaron, I'm stuck. I don't have an answer to this.
That's fine. You don't have to. Is there anything you've seen in how the youth's attitudes towards games have changed over the years you've been doing this? And also now you have a kid that's old enough to like have opinions about video games.
Yeah.
And I always kind of wonder about this now that there's stuff like Roblox and Fortnite that sort of are dominating the attention. And, when we were growing up, we would always just go from game to game to game. I assume you did as well.
Yeah.
And there were just constantly new releases and, oh, here's the next new thing. Here's the next new thing. And now we have these platforms that are giving people new experiences, but they all generally have the same flavor. So do you see kids, I don't know, feeling like we did, wanting more new stuff, or are they just settling in and, going with what they know?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like my kid and a family friend and how they approach games. And my kid's really into games, and our friend is very into games also. And they've kind of done a full tour. They've hit Fortnite, they've hit Roblox, they've hit indie games. They hit Mario Kart. And I think they do like really evil mobile games. And I think they really if anything, they have a much broader palette for games than we did, just because there's so much more out there. We had arcade, we had computer games, and we had video games, and that was like about it. And kids these days have so many just like drastically different kinds of games, including like platform games like Roblox. And I would expect, I think it's kind of early, at least just because these kids I know are really young. It's kind of early for me to like draw a conclusion and say like, aha, these kids like that. And that I couldn't say that. But I would suspect that with them being exposed to so many different kinds of play and games, and hearing kids that are like interested in making games in the future and are already making games, like Jules has this other friend who's DMs their group, and he's 13, and awesome. He just downloaded Unity and Game Maker. He's just kind of like futzing around with both. I would suspect that, when they kind of get their skills up and they're ready to make something, that it might be really interesting. I don't know. The Gameheads kids are making the weirdest stuff you've ever heard about. Like hyphy games, like sideshow games, competitive dance games. Really, really neat stuff. So I always look at that, and I'm always really inspired, just like kind of where kids choose to go. But yeah, I'm excited to see their work as they get older and see what happens.
I would love to see hyphy games. That sounds interesting.
High-Sidin'. That's the game. That was a Gameheads game. They did a High-Sidin'. Oh yeah, they did High-Sidin' Hyphy Edition, which is basically the dance battle game. But the original High-Sidin' was a sideshow game. It was really cool. And the Gameheads showcase, you see just like the craziest stuff. Somebody made an alt control game at this year's Gameheads showcase, which used a shopping cart. And you played with two people. One of them is in the shopping cart, and the other is like kind of like pushing the shopping cart, just like basically pressing on these pressure pads. And then there's another game, another alt control game that was really cool that came out of Gameheads called the Competitive Waffle Eating Game, where it's a head-to-head competition where you're making waffles for your opponent to eat, and when they eat it, they actually use the waffle iron. They go smash, 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 smash to like chew the waffle. It's so cool. That game was got accepted into alt control GDC. I think there's really cool stuff that really stretches the limits of kind of what people are used to with games.
Don Bellenger, thank you so much for being a guest on Make Games, Drink Coffee.
Thank you, Aaron. It was really nice to be here.
And that's the show. Thank you for listening to Make Games, Drink Coffee. You can find the show online at makegamesdrinkcoffee.com or email me at makegamesdrinkcoffee@gmail.com. Recording, editing, production, and original music by me, Aaron Nemoitin. Drink up. I'll see you next week.